Hello everyone, Kirby1 here, and we're continuing the Asphodel series in the Twin Plains. This is turn 35, and as we can see, Agartha has moved in on their attack to try and support Ind, but it might be too little too late for them. They have a pretty strong base of territory, both above land on the main plane, Pantocrator's realm, and also underground. And I didn't get the jump on them like I did with Ind. So let's go ahead and get right into the locations of these battles. So from what we recall last time, we had all of the moves that we were making, and some of them were, well, most of them were successful. One of them notably was not, and then Ind is also making their own reaction moves. Little one right here, so they knocked out my PD, my one PD here. I'm not putting big PD dumps anywhere because I feel like I have enough control of the rating gain that I will be able to take more provinces back than Ind will, and so we'll just be letting him do that. However, here in the province of Xanthrast, Ind raided out with a pretty effective counter to a lot of my things as far as thugging goes. And as we can see, when I sent a bunch of Centaur warriors in to try and take this province, there was a Hashimal there, and he booted me out. He won, and most of my guys had to retreat. That was because he killed the two commanders here. What's interesting is that because this is a many months later being recorded, and there have been a few patches since, and that tends to lead to replay bugs. This replay was a little bit different, but the script and equipment is going to be the same. So he brought a lucky coin and a mace of eruption, as well as random ring of frost. It might have just been an item that they had there, or potentially planning to go into my own territory since I have cold skills. But this could also protect against something like frozen heart spam or something like that by an advanced cast mage. But the real kicker is that Hashimals come with built-in fire shield, and as well as ethereal, which against just regular plain old centaurs here, that's going to be a big problem because they'll kill themselves on the hoof attack and not be able to do enough damage, not just against the ethereal, but also against the, where is it here, 20 invulnerability. So usually that will wind up killing a lot of stuff. Now in this particular drop, the Hashimal wound up landing amongst the centaurs instead of sniping the two commanders. As you can see, he still does a lot of damage, and most of it is to the fire shield. But in this case, we do wind up killing him. So there was a scenario potentially where he could have been taken out, but it did not wind up being that way. If you ever get replay bugs, the end result is always going to be both the battle summary and what you physically see on the map. So that was the situation, and unfortunate as it was, it didn't really slow me down that much. As you can see, we've gotten onto his cap here, and sitting in the Black Alps, we've also broken his fort as we expected, and we will be planning on storming with that. These centaurs are being left outside just because that is what I typically like to do, and these are just guys that retreated from this battle here. In addition, we easily took this province and this province with no losses, and we stormed these two forts. So with the fort in Old Giant Wood, we had a different strategy than in the other fort based on our composition. So in this particular case of the composition, we have front-loaded a bunch of black centaurs, and front-loaded off to the side a bunch of the Carrion Furies, and most of the rest, the Sagittarians, I believe, are on hold and fire, and then we have a bunch of generic spells scripted. In this particular case, we're going to have Foul Vapors drop, but as you will see in a moment, it's probably a bit of overkill and winds up killing uh, quite a few of my own troops unnecessarily. So there's Foul Vapors. The Black Centaurs are scripted on attack and not hold an attack, and they just go right in. They did not get blessed, but being the big old minotaurs that they are, they didn't really need it to clear the gate, and now all of the other carrion are going to stream in on attack rear, roll over that ball of crossbows and kill the mages, and everything else is going to be dead from now on. So as far as total losses, we lost four black minotaurs and a handful of carrions, and nothing else that really matters. So only 46 losses in total, plus the gems that were spent on the storming, and we took that fort quite easily. Virtually the entirety of this army is now going to move onto his cap and should be able to replicate that maneuver pretty easily, although it will depend on what he has in there and what he brings in terms of magic and stuff like that. Now, for the first pillar, what we had instead, since we didn't have a Foul Vapors caster here, is we had Relief and Howl, I believe. We'll check that out in a second. Howl, yeah, and I believe... No, we don't have Relief. We have repeat cast of the Battlefield-wide regen with our Holy Four Prophet. But Howl works a little bit differently. I think in Dominions 5, and I don't remember if this is actually the case or not, in Dominions 5 the wolves was spawned inside of the fortress walls and spammed the mages and stuff like that, which was a bit silly, but has since been changed in Dominion 6, so now the wolves only spawn on the outside of the walls, which makes it quite a bit less useful when it comes to fighting in a fort storming. The wolves might wind up bogging your own troops down and getting hung up by stuff like that. Now, in addition to that, this is a Piconnier fort, and they have a lot of these slingers here, which are going to be dropping slings all over not just my troops, but also my mages in the back line, which were spread in amongst the troops so they could spam a bunch of buffs like Moss Body and things like that. And we're also having a bunch of them on advance and cast so that they can do whatever their off-script spell feels like picking. Apparently they want to do Raise the Dead. Regrowth is actually pretty good on some of my bigger ones, but when they get closer to the front lines they could do things like Venomous Death or things like that, because that's a good battlefield spell to cast. Now once we get to the front lines, I had my troops sort of generically all spaced into lines, but some of the carrion behemoths got lucky and got out front, and because of that, we're actually going to be able to trample into the gate and roll over all these poor Piconnier soldiers that are trying to hold it against elephants that are like 4 times their size, and they wind up taking the gate again quite easily, so that winds up not being a problem for us as well. Unfortunately, we lose 2 of the Dryad Hags. That is no doubt to the 80 slingers that are just tossing rocks everywhere into my formation, as well as a lot more mannequins. But other than that, no sacreds were lost, so that's a little bit of better in terms of sacred losses to that. Now, from there, there was also, I think, an underground battle. Yes, we did wind up getting onto the Fort of the Caverns. We cleared their PD off pretty easily without any significant losses, and we're going to be storming the fort there. And we've got a similar setup to what we had before. Instead of black minotaurs, just regular minotaurs on attack rear. The fact that they are in darkness and have reduced attack skills and things like that is not going to bother them that much with being able to trample. I'm not going to be storming with the Zots because they will probably hold attack rear and then just die immediately. I'm also going to be attacking with a bunch of shades, which should be able to help hit the wall defenders on this flank, which is where their wall defender commander is going to be. So hopefully that'll be able to take him out as well. And then we have a Foul Vapors caster in here somewhere, it looks like. right here. So you can do foul vapors with panic apostates if you have the water random, but if you don't, then you can very easily do that with just any dryad hag if you give them a thistle mace that has the water random. So I'm doing that instead because I didn't have a whole lot of underground panic apostates, so we're still going to be doing foul vapors in that battle as well. Aside from that, we have included the foul vapors caster into the assault on Ind, so that'll be helpful as well. And for the outside battle, we'll have Howl scripted, so that should be a pretty strong fight there if he does decide to try and break siege. Now our next play is going to be to decide how to react to Agartha. So Agartha, what he did is he is sending out probing forces. He decided to go from here out here, and he is not sure about how much of a commitment I'm going to spend on defending this throne. The trick is that I'm not going to defend it at all, and so if he wants to come at it, I don't mind losing it for a few turns, and we're just going to ignore it and mass troops into this fort instead, and wait until we have a lot of mage support in order to be able to fight Agartha if he decides to move out. Addition to that, I'm going to seed all of his lands with scouts so that I can see where his armies are and where they will be moving to. He also made a probing attack out here, and so that is a bunch of Shard Guard and Oracles of the Ancient. Now, probing attacks and raiding is not going to bother me too much and not going to do a lot of damage to my economy or infrastructure just because I'm so large. If he wants to try and go onto any of my forts, this is not going to be able to siege it down, so I'm much less concerned about stuff like that. So what I'm going to be doing is, since I have most of Ind's lands taken at this point, the light raiders are going to move forward and immediately move into Agartha's lands, and we're going to try and snipe this temple, and we're going to try and snipe this temple, and this temple will be attacked by a bunch of centaurs from here, and this is a little bit less than that, but a bunch of black centaurs, so the bless will maybe carry me a little heavier. I'm also just going to ping this. What I want to do is I want to see how much he might be patrolling with to see what his actions are in terms of how much he expects me to move onto his forts, and to see how much he's investing into defending his own territories outside of his forts. This, and also to see what the army composition is before I decide whether to attack or not. So I'm building forces here, I'm building forces here, but against Agartha's forces, I feel like I will need a lot more mage support, and just a big death ball of mannequins is probably not going to cut it. Agartha also tends to have a bunch of different poison resistant options as well for its lineup, such as all of its statues, and I believe the Magma Children have poison resistance, and Olms have poison resistance, so it can be a problem for not doing as much damage with something like foul vapors as you would normally do. The next thing that I'm doing is I'm going to be consolidating a large force in Asphodel here. I've decided to take this turn to forge a Bloodstone, which will have my Earth magic up potentially a substantial bit higher. So with Dance of the Hours, I could get Earth Boots and Bloodstone to get up to Earth 6 for things like Earthblood Deepwell at some point if I get there, which I'm not aiming for, but eventually it might be a long-term target. So this is going to be a little bit of a fun plan that we'll see begin to unfold next turn, and so we'll get right into that. So here we are, turn 36, and there's going to be a lot that we're going to show in this turn, and we're going to be setting up for the next turn, which is going to be a fun one as well, and that will be the end of this hopefully shortish episode. So there are going to be a lot more battles in Agartha's lands, but some of them were for us and some of them were against us. As you can see, Agartha has not been sitting idle. As soon as I can find Agartha, there we go. And continuing to raid in what might wind up being a big circle here. Additionally, they react in a good predictive manner to defend against the raid that I had planned to take out this temple here. And so they wipe out all of my light raiding force, but a lot of these guys were black centaurs, unfortunately. He has a lot of magma children, and there's that poison resistance, as I mentioned before. He has a lot of sentinels. Well, I say a lot, but this is him summoning one per turn, so it is a bit of a substantial amount here. Looks like he doesn't actually have fire resistance on his sentinels, which could be a problem if they mix with the magma children and their heat aura. But yeah, this composition right here, in terms of shard guard and sentinels and magma children are basically like summonable fire elementals of a sort, which don't have spirit form, which can be quite strong because they can take buffs and things like that. They have the flame strike ability and they have the fire shield and firepower. They don't have diminishing shape or anything like that, and so they have quite low hit points. But you can see that fire shield is a big weakness for Asphodel in terms of both the hoof attacks as well as the vine attacks, which we don't have any carrying here, but can be quite a problem, and the flame strikes are going to delete entire squares of both centaurs and carrion once we get into battles like that. And the very heavy armor and strong bless from shard guards means I'm going to do almost nothing to them as well. We do kill 5 of them, so that's a good bet for us, and we kill 13 magma children, so it was a good attack in terms of whittling his numbers down, but it was a loss ultimately for us. Now here we do wind up succeeding in taking this. He had a strong PD dump here, but it wasn't enough. Centaur warriors are still quite strong against any numbers of PD. We did also ping his capital. Looks like there are some attentive statues on patrol with his Earth Reader. And we are not going to attack here with any force of centaurs. They are actually going to hide, and that is sort of my way of deciding that they're going to disappear because it is a stealth raiding force, and I'm going to reinforce with even more guys here. So we're going to have a massive force of centaurs, but it will hopefully to him look like I've either moved into one of these provinces potentially, so he doesn't know where they're going to pop up again. But what it is going to wind up being is just a supplementary force that I can then use to reach wherever I want to, depending on how the next turn goes. And we're going to ping this to see if he keeps the same composition in terms of patrolling forces, and he doesn't have anybody patrolling here, and he does have a large force patrolling here, so we know the composition, the most likely composition of this force, which is also good for us because that's a lot of mages that he decided to commit to patrolling instead of either researching, forging, summoning, whatever. But we're not going to engage that. Again, I feel like from my perspective that I don't have a big enough mage force to be able to compete against this. He has a lot more mages than me, and I think this is probably going to wipe out this force here if I were to send it in. If not, I probably would at the very least HP route myself just from the number of mannequins he can probably delete en masse. So we're actually going to try and bypass him, and we're going to go around this way and stage most of the forces here, as well as forward deploying all of these sneaky guys here. So that's the plan. Now the last plan part of this plan is that I'm going to employ what is one of my favorite and often forgot about and underutilized spells, which is something that I used all the way back many years ago in Dominions 5, even when I played a game as Asphodel. And that spell is the spell Fairy Trod. Now, Fairy Trod is an interesting one because it actually changed a little bit from how it was in Dominions 5, because in Dominions 5 it was straight nature, but now it is nature glamour, so it's a little bit harder to pull off. Not to mention that you are not able to use it with any immobile pretenders or anything like that. But I think that in this particular circumstance, casting Fairy Trot is going to be a very effective use of my pretender. And what I'm going to be doing with this is I'm going to be bringing everything that I consolidated into my capital, most of which doesn't care about morale or anything like that. And I'm going to be using my pretender to cast Howl and then Earthquake Warriors, although Howl might just completely fatigue her out, and so the Earthquake Warriors might come off a bit late. That is a 20 plus radius, so I'm hoping that I can be able to hit a whole bunch of carrion with that or something like that, but we'll see. In any event, that is going to hit forest to forest. So that's how Fairy Trot works. It is an army teleport that comes much earlier than most army teleports, and it goes from forest to forest. Now, the way that the spell Fairy Trot is described is that it has a chance of ending up in a neighboring forest province, which means that this is actually a perfect target. I'm going to have 100% precision here by aiming at this forest because there are no adjacent forests. It can be a little bit unwieldy if you try and use it to defend your own territories once you've gone far into the game in Asphodel and you have all of your forests adjacent to each other. You might land in a province that you weren't hoping to land in. But this is going to be a magic phase attack, which means that I will hit this province and all of the PD in it and wipe out the PD, and then when any of his troops decide to consolidate here, depending on which way he planned on moving, that will be immediately followed up by this group of 200 guys. So when I press Y here to see what is moving into Black Forest, we have, as we can see, almost 250 mannequins, but if we include teleporters, that bumps that number up to 600. And we have, this guy is just the gem carrier. And so we have Foul Vapor is going to be in this battle. We have the Divine Blessing from our Prophet and all the repeat carrion growths for the entire battlefield. And then we have Howl and Earthquake Warriors. So we have a double Howl here too, because this Howl might get used up by however much PD there is. So if it is, then this Howl is going to be able to be a follow-on. And if not, this guy can decide to use those nature gems for whatever he feels like. Maybe something like Swarm or something like that would be nice. So anyways, this is going to wind up being a very interesting battle, but I think that's enough time spent on Agartha, although let's just double check if we're making any moves underground. We sort of are, but it's a back and forth dance, because again, mannequins in my opinion are not going to do super well against massed forces of Agartha unless I have large amount of mage support. So I'm basically just moving back and forth and seeing how he decides to react. What I had actually hoped to do was catch this group here if it had decided to go here and then move down, because this is just a small enough raiding group that I feel like this would have been able to kill it. But since it did not, I'm deciding to back off and see how he decides to react. If he moves in here and thinks he can take this force with whatever I sent there, or if he's going to move here, which I did not decide to ping, so I guess I wouldn't know his full army composition. But I don't really have a lot in the area to be able to fight into his underground strongholds quite yet. But what I am doing is I'm moving a bunch of guys over in this direction to take this province and then maybe go underwater as well if I take a bunch of mannequins and start clearing them out down here. So yeah, let's move on to now the Ind front. And Ind is right here. So as far as Ind goes, he did wind up patrolling with a massive force, but we did win. So we have, again, Howl and Foul Vapors going up for us. He has the Soldier Priests and a bunch of Lions of Strange Color, probably on attack rear, and he sends one of his Hashimals right up and over into a big old stack of dudes. Also onto attack rear, so that's going to mess a bit with my carrion archers. But he gets tied down pretty quickly, and there's just too many guys for his soldier priests to hold back, and the Minotaurs get right back into the mage core and the archers and trample them all, and we drive them off the field. We wind up killing 4 of his mages, 6 mages in total, and Hashimal. This is his pretender right here, which made it off the field, and most of his sacred troops as well were eliminated in this fight. Meanwhile, we lost a couple carrion commanders that attempted to try and engage that Hashimal probably. They were ungeared, so they probably deleted themselves with sleep vines and claws and hoof attacks. And one Dryad Hag might have gotten sniped by either archer fire or something else like that. And we lost 9 of our Black Minotaurs, so that's going to mess with our ability to storm the gate a little bit, unfortunately, because you really need a sort of critical mass of those Black Minotaurs in order to be able to break through. Other than that, it was mostly just chaff. So we have a substantial hold on top of his cap now, still about 700 or so carrion, and his fort is cracked. And I decide to go ahead and immediately storm, and I decide to leave the Black Minotaurs outside the walls because, again, I feel like they probably would mostly just die and not be able to breach that gate. And what I'm going to be sending in instead are the Carrion Furies. And they will be on hold attack, and so that they can get a bunch of buffs. So, yep, we're going to supplement them with a bunch of nests of asps, because those are all size 1 units, and there's a lot of them, so they'll just mix in amongst them. Now, the Venomous Death casts are for any sneaky Hashimals that decide to try and attack rear again, because if they do, they will probably be in range of this 30 spell casting range. Now, as far as the Black Alps, it turns out he had a substantial force stationed in here as well. This is a lot of sacreds and a lot of crossbows. Not that many mages though, so that's promising. And we have as well our Black Centaurs making a rush for the gate. Now in this case he has Cynocephalians, because this is a Cynocephalian fort. But our size 5, because of larger, is going to allow us to still be able to trample through and break the gate. So we have made it through, and we also have our elite force of Carrion Titans mixed in with Carrion Furies, as well as a bunch of asps like I was doing from before. And they're all going to filter through now that the gate is open. The Black Centaurs are Black Minotaurs are unfortunately all going to die now that they've completed their job of breaking through. But now we've got the big boys in here in the mix. And the Carrion Furies are going to do a number on these poor Mirror Guard and Soldier Priests. As you can see, they all get deleted. And next on is the crossbows, and they just keep trucking through, and they break that line, and then the mages stand no chance, although a couple of them with their astral shields do wind up messing with us a little bit, but they still get killed in short order. So that was another win for us, although this one was a little bit more costly because of how much he had committed inside of here. We kill 160 of his troops. That's a substantial portion of his cap-only sacred troops. And we lose over 200 and all of the Black Minotaurs. So our Black Minotaur count overall is going down pretty speedily. We also lose our first Carrion Titans, rest in peace, the Phlegron Giants of old, and only 4 of our Carrion Furies. But you can see the massive, massive devastation that Carrion Furies wreak upon the enemy. This is just sort of like a pretty light bless as far as what can be taken on these guys. But 15 of these guys did over 100 kills by themselves. The vast majority of the kills were done by just 15 Carrion Furies, and they lost only 4 of their number as a result of that. So these guys are absolute monsters. In addition to that, we wind up storming this fort, and this one was also pretty costly, but that was mostly because our army composition was a little less strong than at the other battle. And he also has a large force in here as well, which is something I was afraid of. I feel like if I had brought my Zots and tried to do attack rear and stuff like that, they would have died and HP routed me, no doubt. So in this case, we're going to have the Minotaurs rush the gate. It's a palisade, so there are a bit fewer of the Cynocephalians, so we managed to breach through by sheer numbers, but it was not by trampling them. So eventually we clear that pretty quickly. The Clockwork Horrors are also helping with that as well. Now we're going to get into a thick line of soldier priests being supported by crossbows, as well as a bunch of Cynocephalians and their Inn's version of their little indie barbarian guys that they can get, the cannibal warriors and stuff like that. And it's going to be a pretty bloody fight here. We're going to lose a lot of stuff. The Shades move right through the wall and into their archery line. But most of the work winds up being done by the Foul Vapors that we were smart to bring along to this fight. Because the soldier priests, as well as the archers and a couple mages that they have, are doing a heavy number on our mannequins. If it had just been trying to rely on the mannequins for all of this fight, we would have been deleted over the course of the battle. But we do manage to kill enough of his guys that he starts an HP rout, and the rest of them are killed by poison, and we take the day. So that was also another costly battle. We only lost 1 Dryad Hag, and as you may recall from what I had scripted from before, even though, so I'm putting Foul Vapors up, and I added protection from poison right up front for all of my mages, so that they would not be as affected by that as they could have been. But you can see from what's left of our force that it tried to storm this fort, and, well, succeeded, but stormed the fort, we lost a lot. We lost 180 guys, and all of the Minotaurs that we had recruited, all of the Clockwork Horrors, most of the Shades, yeah, everything died, but also everything of his died. So we have succeeded in clearing Ind out from underground. There's just this one fort left, which I'm kind of leaving for later because I'm trying to focus on Agartha now. So in addition to that, we're going to be sending this force over here to take that out, and we're going to be moving over here. Aside from that, there was one notable event on the surface world, and that is right here in the Farseer Mountains. We had a unique event that ancient power has been disturbed, and everyone has turned into mindless plant beings, aka traitor mannequins. The ancient Mandragora and a bunch of mannequins have completely deleted the population of this province and taken it for themselves. I'm a bit sad by that, but because the population is now null and there's relatively no value except for 1 air gem out of this province, I feel like I plan on leaving it for a while and just ignoring that it exists, because while I could make it into like a Carrion Fortress or something like that, I don't feel like wasting the time or the troops to try and do that. So with Agartha right there, that's my focus. Alright, let's move on to the next turn and see the results of this tactical drop. So here we are with turn 37, and let's see how Fairy Trod worked out for us. So we're going to be hitting just PD first because there wasn't anything else in the province at the time that we attacked it. And there was not that much PD, but it won't be showing up for the subsequent fight. We wind up not needing to use our Howl for our Pretender, so that's gems saved on that front. And we kill all of his stuff in short order, losing only a handful of carrions. So part 2 of the battle in Black Forest is going to be our consolidation, and I think that what the Agarthan player was planning on was what he had seen my forces staging in the pond, as far as around 200 to 300 mannequins and whatever mages I had. And so what he has sent was what I suspect in reaction to that, hoping to cut me off at the pass. But he has now been surprised with a supplementary force, bringing my total army up to over 600, plus the spells from my Pretender as well. And so we've got this massive front line of Magma Children, a southern flank of Shard Guard, and a northern flank of Sentinels, centrally located Mage Blob. But the Golem Crafters do not have any gems on them. His Pretender has a few, and one of his Oracles has some as well. But I think he was mostly just prepared for a bunch of buff scripting and not necessarily expecting to see as many as I brought with me. My Sagittarians are going to move up to be in range and will pepper the front line with disrupting arrow fire. In addition to that, it looks like his troops are scripted to attack closest, which unfortunately is going to be extremely disruptive to his formation as well because of Howl. And so his Magma Children are going to be dancing back and forth and splitting themselves up, which is great for me in terms of being able to take them piecemeal. Unfortunately, they're going to have I'm going to have that same problem of running into them with centaurs and self-deleting. So my tiny little flanking force over here is going to kill themselves. And now Sentinels are going to be almost the perfect counter to mannequins, because the sleep binds are going to do next to nothing, and I'm really not going to have probably enough punching force with a 15 hoof attack or a 12 damage bite attack in order to get through this very, very high level of protection. The Black Minotaurs that get sprinkled in will be able to do the damage here, but I think this is going to be a bit of a stalemate while I just sort of both sides wind up just holding each other there. I'm tar pitting him and he's tar pitting me, so we're going to have to be focusing on the other flanks. The central flank will just be that kind of thing that you're going to have to push through despite the heavy losses, and the southern flank I'll probably be able to delete and or put to sleep with all of the massive number of sleep vines. Carrion Furies versus Shard Guard. Let's see how that does. Looks like we are very, very capable of just one-shotting all of these guys with big, heavy hits from Carrion Furies. And these guys are just even shrugging off the fire damage from smacking the Magma Children as well. So they'll kill each other off, but it's a good trade for me because mine are free and his are not, and so eventually I'm going to be able to whittle them down. There are some retreats already. You see the Golem Crafters killing themselves as they run away, fully poisoned. The poison is, like I said, not going to do pretty much anything against the Magma Children, the Sentinels, or the Shard Guard. However, He has a lot of these defenders of the halls, and they have no poison resistance whatsoever. Golem crafters, no poison resistance. So we are doing a lot of damage to him. And in addition to that, I do think it looks like he's starting to get some routing going on, because I've mostly destroyed his front line and still have plenty more mannequins where that came from. So there's only a few magma children left, and you can see the sentinels are just sitting there not doing a whole lot of damage. Even the wolves now are starting to get further tar pitted as well. These carrion bears are going to have a lot of damage, but I think it's still just slow going here. So eventually we do manage to push through. Magma children, the other way that they are not the same as fire elementals is that fire elementals are mindless and magma children are not. So if your army retreats, they will retreat as well, which can be both good and bad. You won't lose all of them in a retreat like you would fire elementals, but if you HP route, then they go away as well. So we take the field, and this was a very, very costly battle for Agartha, and a well-planned move on my part, because it's broken up his lands and his ability to consolidate. What I don't want is to have to fight big armies of his troops, because if they're all in the same place together, it can be very difficult for me, as far as mannequins go, to overwhelm him. And so we see a successful breakup of him. His forces scatter to the surrounding provinces, which I can then decide how I want to take apart as well. But this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about having difficulty with. 300 guys, if I'm not prepared for, with a substantial mage force, is going to do a number on my troops, and I think we almost have the same number of mages, which is bad for me. I want to overwhelm him, not be on even parity with his doom stacks. So because of that, I've decided to just completely ignore this. I am going to let him go from here to here, and even though my fort is cracked, if he decides to storm it, so much the better, because he will be out of position and slow. And I don't care if he takes this army of almost 300 guys and runs rampant around Phlegra's old lands, because I'm going straight for his heart, which is the capital. Now that his mages have scattered and broken, I'm going to shut down further recruitment, and this entire force that I staged in Jinport right here can move completely from here to here because of the amazing map movement that Asphodel has access to. And these guys are going to spread out as well. We're going to take this province, we're going to take this province, and we're going to take this province, because Ind has also been stormed as well. And so just briefly skimming over here, like I say, we've basically taken all of this, and we've covered the Agarthan front. Underground, not a whole lot going on. So moving on to the Ind front, we'll watch the Ind battles. This was a whole lot of nothing. He didn't have any further guys stationed outside, so this was a massive overkill of taking this province, and even this was pretty much overkill of taking this province. Storming the fort in Ind, we had pretty much decimated his soldiers and a lot of his mages, but he still has quite a few here, as well as Hashmal, his pretender. But I think at this point the Ind player had realized the gravity of the situation and decided to, if not this turn, then next turn, go AI, and so this is whatever is left of that scripting. And so we've got our front-loaded Carrion Furies that are going to not trample but punch through the gate, and we do have a Foul Vapors caster in this battle, so that will probably be able to do most of the work for us. So, yep, there's the gate taken, and the rest falls in short order. There's his Pretender deleted, the Hashmal is gone as well, and so we win the day. As far as losses go, a lot of Mannequin Chaff. 8 Carrion Furies lost, but again, the vast majority of the kills are attributed to the Carrion Furies. I'm not 100% sure if Foul Vapors will tell you it's attributed to the person who cast it. It doesn't look like it because none of the mages got killed, so I think that's a separate thing. But as far as things that got slapped in the face, Carrion Furies are doing that work. By the way, let's briefly revisit the Black Forest and go over the casualty reports for that as well. So 4 Golem Crafters killed, 1 Oracle of the Ancients killed, 50 Magma Children, all the Sentinels, all the Shard Guards, so very good haul for us here. For us, it was all of our Black Centaurs, all of our Black Minotaurs, so our recruitable Sacreds. I'm been spreading them probably a bit too thin and using them too fast and loose, so we are losing more than we're getting, absolutely losing more than we're getting at this point, so there are not many of them left. But you can see that the Carrion Furies again lost about half their count, but still wound up pulling their weight and doing the majority of the kills here. So Carrion Furies, absolutely MVP of this game. In addition to, obviously, Foul Vapors, which, as always, is a very strong spell. So, now that Ind is dead, completely purged from the surface world, all he has left is this one fort under here, which I'll be sending a ragtag group of random stuff that I've got lying around, and we're just hitting Agartha hard now that we've got only him to focus on. We think we just ping this to see how much PD he has there if we decided to do that. We decided to wreak bloody vengeance on the annoying werewolves here. And yeah, we're just hitting him everywhere. On the surface world will be mine. Pantocrator's realm will belong to the next Pantocrator, and it will be me. Aside from that, I know this is Twin Plains, and we haven't really covered it at all, but there hasn't been a whole lot going on. I have scouts sort of watching here and everywhere, but there will be the occasional pinging or random battle going on between Yis, Agartha. Relay is still alive and kicking, although maybe we'll see their last stand next turn, so that's something to look forward to in the next video. But other than that, there hasn't been a whole lot going on, and not a whole lot in the cave lair as well. We boot Agartha out of here. And so yeah, that's the end of that. So we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show and the fireworks, and have a good one.